Hey everyone, welcome back to Electoral Dysfunction, the show where comedians and experts debate the news of the week from the safety of their quarantines. I'm your host, Tom Brennan. Thank you for joining us for another week. The national conventions are now behind us, and whatever your politics, I think after a couple of weeks of bitter partisan divide, we could all really use a little bit of inspiration, someone to really buck up our spirits and remind us about all the good in the world. So we got a great guest with us tonight. I'm really excited to have him. I don't know much about his world, but I'm excited to learn a little bit from the world of MMA. Oh, this is a big name. Please welcome to the show, Donovan the Destroyer Duncan. Donovan, how are you? Welcome to Electoral Dysfunction.
Hello, Tom. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you for letting me come here. Just wanted to say like a few words of inspiration for the American people, for all the people actually everywhere, because right now during such a turbulent time in the world, I feel like everyone just needs a little bit of inspiration,
Oh, certainly, definitely. Oh, I could use it every single day. Just getting out of bed in the morning for me at this point. Yes, I could use it.
You should never give up getting up in the morning. You should always do that.
That's good advice for us all. So talk to me about your career. I don't know a ton about the world of MMA, but I certainly hear the name Destroyer Duncan a lot. Talk to me about your career and the inspiration that you provide for all of us.
Well, first of all, like you mentioned earlier, Tom, my name is Donovan the Destroyer Duncan. I've been in 33 different matches, 33 fights. Grueling fights, actually. I got 28 knockouts. Yes, 28 knockouts, all of which I unfortunately happened to be on the unfortunate opposite end of. But I just kept on getting up.
Hold on one quick second there. Because again, I don't know a lot about MMA. So you're saying you had 28 knockouts that you were on the other side of. That means you were knocked out 28 times?
Yes, 28 consecutive times.
28 consecutive times.
Yes, my first 28 matches knocked out clean.
Wow. Cold. Is that a record?
It has to be. I strive for the best. And this is part of the message that I have for everyone out there.
Sure.
There's going to be people who tell you not to keep going. There's going to be people who tell you to quit. There's going to be people who tell you, hey, Donovan, please don't get up this time. Just stay on the floor. But you never give up no matter what happens.
Right. Talk to me about some of those people who've told you to never give up. I'm curious. Any of them, who's discouraged you in your career?
Every single person. So I guess I can start with my mom. My mom, she said, as a matter of fact, after my 28th fight, my mom, she called me over. She gave me some Campbell's soup, and she was like, "Hey, sweetheart, I'm concerned about your head, your brain. I'm concerned about your teeth. I got a few teeth knocked out." But I was like, "Mom, what's the issue?" She said that you're always getting beat up, you're always getting knocked out. So I was like, "Mom, I promise you from the bottom of my heart." Sorry if I get a little emotional.
Sure, no problem.
I promise you that for my next fight, my 28th fight, I'm not gonna get knocked out. I'm not going to get knocked out. And you know what happened in my 29th fight? You know what happened?
What happened?
I didn't get knocked out. I didn't get knocked out. Nope. I submitted because my opponent, he ripped my arm out of the socket.
Right.
And he began to beat me with it. But luckily I had access to my other arm. So I was able to tap out.
Right. Well, I mean, that's a right decision. I would think, I imagine your mother was not alone. I'm just curious. Has anyone from, say, the medical community told you to quit?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So my doctor, my pediatrician, who I haven't seen in about 20 years, but very supportive of my family in general. My psychiatrist and my therapist, they all actually, it's funny, after my 30th fight, I don't, see, the thing is, a lot of people like to judge. A lot of people judge me. Because after my 29th fight, when I tapped out, I was like, Mom, I told everybody in the community, everybody who said that they love me, I was like, listen, I promise you, I'm not gonna get knocked out. I'm not gonna tap out. So when it came to my 30th fight, I I actually can't remember what happened. I just remember being choked out
Mm-hmm.
and then waking up in the middle of my grandmom's living room, in the middle of an intervention. So, everyone, everybody, even my family, everybody who loves my family, they were there and they were saying, like, hey, Donovan, you gotta quit, you gotta stop. You know what I'm saying? And it was like, it's not good for your mental health. It's not good for your physical health. It's not good for your spiritual, emotional. It's not good for your health at all. But you know what? I just kept on getting up, kept on, taking these fights. I kept on fighting.
Now, I'm curious. I once saw, I don't know a ton about the world of mixed martial arts, but I've seen videos. And I remember seeing a viral video once of a guy gets into the ring and then just starts immediately bleeding and his arm just kind of fell out of its socket there. What would you say to, what would you say to someone like that?
Oh, actually, I believe that happened to me as well. So
That video was you?
yes, that video, that probably was me because that happened a few times. But you know what? I would say to that person, if I was in the ring, if I was the referee,
Mm-hmm.
I would be like, hey, bro, don't quit. Don't give up. I know you're bleeding out of your nose. I know your teeth are going to get kicked in. I know you're probably bleeding from places you've never bled before. But you can't quit. You can't give up. You got to keep going. You got to keep moving forward. Because if you don't, then that means you're a quitter. You can't be a quitter, no matter what. No matter what.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm not sure about your police work there, but I have to say I respect your integrity and your willingness to just keep fighting to the end. Any upcoming fights? Anything you're doing coming up next that you can promote here?
Yes. I've got a fight coming up. It's actually in a few months. It's going to be November the 12th. It's going to be me against his name is Adrian Boneyard Jackson. He's undefeated. He's actually never lost. So it's funny. I've never won. He's never lost.
Yeah,
It's
like the unstoppable force versus the immovable object, kind of.
Yep, that's right. You see, that's why I like you, Tom. You just get it. I don't have to explain things with you. You just understand. So if everyone wants to tune in, I'll guarantee it'll be a good fight. I'm gonna try my best not to get knocked out. I don't really feel like tapping out either. So if I happen to quit, just know that it's not me because I don't quit. It's not me. If you see somebody quit on that screen, it's not me. All right, it's somebody else.
Not you at all. Well, Donovan the Destroyer Duncan, I thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for your inspirational words. We'll certainly, if we're not watching the fight, we'll definitely be praying for you and your family that night. Thank you for joining us, Donovan the Destroyer Duncan.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Give up.
If you want to find out the further adventures of Donovan the Destroyer Duncan, follow Marcely Jean-Pierre over on his social media handles at mgenius. That's at MJEANIOUS. I hope I spelled that correctly. Thank you very much, Champ, for being with us. Ned Thorne, star wipe us to the panel. And join me in welcoming this week's panel, and it is a great one. Very excited to have all these folks here. First up, it's their first time on the show. She is an attorney and writer focused on racial and gender justice. Follow her on Twitter at Audrey Lord of Mercy. Madiba Denny's with us. Hey, Madiba, how are you? Welcome to Electoral Dysfunction.
Hello, very happy to be here.
Very excited to have you. Next up, very funny comedian and writer. Follow him on Twitter at Benari Lee. Also noted loser and sucker for achieving the rank of Master Sergeant in the United States Army. Benari Polton's with us. Hey, Benari, how are you?
Outstanding. What a great weekend to be joining you all here.
Yes, the labor itself.
Yes.
Very funny comedian. Follow her on social media at Megan_Sass and be on the lookout soon for Hillel's Mitts vote. I get that correct? Megan Sass is with us. Hey, Megan, how are you?
I'm, alive.
All right. We did it.
Yes.
One day I'm going to do this show where that is not the default answer that everyone has when I ask them how they're doing.
I mean, my bangs aren't doing great. I think you might have had me on the show before I cut them and then shortly after I cut them. And now they're just, at some point in the course of this quarantine, I will have the appropriate level of bangs for this show.
occasionally to like do a recap of what quarantine has been like, I will just flip through the YouTube page for this show and look at my hair as it like grows out and then comes back down and like just grows back out. And it's really sad. Editorial columnist for the New York Daily News, my buddy, my pal, my lifelong chum, Robert George rounds out the panel. Robert, how are you, my friend? Have we started drinking yet?
My trusty Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Good.
We've been pushing that. We've been pushing that through the whole quarantine, so we're still here. And for some reason, Mike's Hard Lemonade has still not reached out to us for either a promotional arrangement or a cease and desist order. So,
yeah, I was gonna say maybe we should promise to stop.
So there you go. By the way, I should and I don't know why I don't do this more. I'm on Twitter at just at Rob George. So you can you can come for the puns and stay for the cogent commentary, or come for the cogent commentary and stay for the puns. However anybody wishes. But
come for the commentary and tolerate the puns. Is that
well, that is also an option. That is also
for those of us still trying to make a name for ourselves in this world of punditry. Appreciate him for the retweets. So with that,
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh man, I didn't even mean that. Boy, I'm dumb. Anyway, so when I sat down to plan out this week's show, it seemed like the real big controversy for Donald Trump this week would be that in the tail end of 2019, he was suddenly whisked away to the hospital, and Vice President Pence had to be on standby to assume the powers of the presidency. Not necessarily an unusual thing. It's happened a lot with presidents. George W. Bush famously gave Dick Cheney the powers of the presidency when he had an errant pretzel attack. It happens. But it only became a thing that I noted and cared about when the president, responding to this report, explicitly vowed that he had not had multiple strokes, which the report did not indicate that he had had. And I generally am I don't know about the rest of you, but the president of the United States, who as of this recording is still Donald John Trump, generally if he says something's not true, I'm like, oh, that must be true then.
Multiple mini strokes, Tom.
Multiple mini strokes. Sorry.
Strokes. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I've having.
He's a golfer, so mini strokes are important to him. So
that's very true. All right, you're on the board with a pun. But then towards the end of this week, a new story came out about our president from the Atlantic.
Just one, Tom? Just one news story came out about our president?
Certainly one that I care to think of right now. A lot happens in a week. I can't keep it all in here. But the biggest story that everyone's talking about right now, the president of the United States apparently referring to members of our armed service, particularly those who have given their lives in battle, as losers and suckers. I don't know why suckers is so funny to me. I love that for such a crass, vulgar guy, he still uses 1950s slang every once in a while. I guess that's what I find funny. That he asked what's in it for them about various people when visiting cemeteries. Even said that in front of, I believe, John Kelly, the chief of staff, in front of the grave of his son. And
John Kelly is still not saying anything back to him. I would just like to point out, he's still taking it because he doesn't want to be divisive.
Well,
which by the way could be seen in two different ways. On the one hand, as you said, oh well, he's still taking it. On the other, it could be, it's very notable that when the White House rushed out all of these people saying, oh no, the president didn't say that, or the president wouldn't say that, or I was there and it was something completely different. John Kelly did indeed keep his quiet, which could lead people to think that, oh yeah, he said it.
Yeah. Don't forget, Megan, in the world of old white men not saying anything, they consider that to be a real big deal. Because if they don't speak, I mean, their voices are so important.
I was just thinking there were other members of the military that have condemned this.
It's very true. But the reporting was later confirmed by liberal rag Fox News. So I want to start. I'm going to throw this to Benari to start. I think there's a lot to unpack on this thing. But from an emotional standpoint, as someone who has served this country, you've served it under presidents that you have personally supported and presidents you've personally opposed, and you've, as I understand it, done it with great honor. What does it feel like to hear the commander-in-chief say that kind of thing about soldiers and about the troops?
Well,
are you allowed to?
Let me first start by saying that I in no way, my opinions in no way represent those of the United States Army, the United States military, the U.S. government, our coalition forces or partners, anyone real or imagined. These are solely my opinions as
Fair enough.
me. It is unsurprising and disappointing as it continues to be. This is not new for this particular person. He ran on in the campaign. He notably said that troops who got PTSD couldn't handle it. He completely, went against John McCain, which should have peeled off an entire amount of Republican support for him, but didn't. And then continued to bash John McCain up until the point that John McCain died, and then continued to bash John McCain in death. He does not respect anyone, but he definitely does not respect people who do things that they don't have to do. And I think it's very much a window into his, he's a sociopath. And so I think that it goes to the fact that he views everyone as a sucker if they can be, in his view, manipulated into doing something that can cost them their lives or their livelihood when they didn't have to do it. We have an all-volunteer army. There is no real reward in it other than doing the job. And the idea that people could do a job that calls to them to do something that's bigger than themselves, that gives back to a country that is given to them, that is that the only reward is doing something good for other people, laying down your life in service to ideals and an idea of making this country greater or protecting people after you're gone. He doesn't have any concept of that. And so to him, that's something that only suckers would do. And it also speaks to his disdain for his own base. He loves nothing more than sending people out to debase themselves and humiliate themselves in service to him. And he knows that. And he loves watching that. And so I think that's how he views the world. There are people who get what they can out of anything that they take part in and personally enrich themselves. And then there are people who do it for some other cause, and those people are suckers. And I think that's really the bottom line. I mean, it's shameful. The fact that it sticks to him this time, I mean, is at least there's that. I mean, he's already lost the military. The poll had already come out that the majority of active duty service members not only disapprove of him, but support Biden over him, which is sort of that hasn't happened since. It's been a long time since the Democrat has been
Johnson.
supported. But it also speaks to how upside down we are, and another reason why they don't want people to vote by mail. The almost all active duty service members vote by mail, and Republicans have long supported vote by mail. That was a huge issue in 2000 because they knew that the service members' votes that were coming in by mail were probably going to swing Republican. This year, that's not the case. So, I mean, all of these are tied up to he doesn't care about the military now because he already knows he's lost them. So right now he's hunkering down. He's playing to his base. He's cornered. That makes him a little scarier because we don't know what he's going to do. And the only takeaway I can have is at least this is screwing up his holiday golfing weekend. he's not having a good time. He might still go golfing, but he's not enjoying it. So right. At least there's that.
He is indeed golfing. Actually, I think he's at his. I think it's his Virginia. His Virginia range this time around, as opposed to his New Jersey one. Number one, I've always said this before, Benari, but thank you for your service, and we love that we love that we're your backup plan. So,
what does that mean?
What?
What does that mean?
Oh, we're raising an electoral dysfunction army right now. Yeah.
Is exactly what I mean. Is like his number.
We're not going to win many wars. I can tell you that.
His number one thing is the army, and the electoral dysfunction are his backup troops. I'm sorry. Anyway,
Oh dear.
Well, this is the thing. What I was going to say is, Benari, we love your service. The only reason why we might think that you're a loser is because you hang out with people like us. I think that's more the point I was trying to say there. But what you said was absolutely spot on, and obviously, since I never served, there's no way I could add to it. The only caution that I would say in this, and I think it's very, very important, is that, as you said, the only reason that this is sticking to him is because ... If there's one thing we have found in, I'll say the 5 years of the Trump era, because going back to 2015 when he announced that there's a lot of things that should stick to this man that don't. And in fact, it's interesting that we're back where we are before, because as Tom knows, one of the things he loves teasing me about is that I said on our show, when we were, when we were in the
day of the John McCain slam,
the day of the because his John McCain statement, Trump's statement about he's not a hero, had happened on a Saturday afternoon at this Values Voter event in DC, and we had a show later that evening, and I said famously on that show, this is the beginning of the end of Donald Trump's campaign, because there's no way that the Republican troops supporting base would tolerate a smear of somebody like John McCain, and that's not quite what happened. And then even if you fast forward to October of 2016, when the Access Hollywood tape came out, he said, "Oh, okay, well, that's it. He's lost all women's support right now. There's no way that the Republican base that believes in family values and things like that is going to tolerate that."
Yeah. But I will say the difference now is, and personally, the timing of this smacks of the Lincoln Group to me.
The Lincoln Project.
The Lincoln Project, rather. Right. The Lincoln Project, because they are that contingent of Republican voters right now who are either making up for 2016, and I know that whatever happens after this election, don't count on anything. However, this particular election, they very much know what can feed a specific type of Republican voter and what they will respond to, and the timing of this, not on a Friday, but on a Thursday night before holiday weekend, to take us into the whole weekend news cycle. As a Democrat, I'm very used to getting blindsided by this kind of report dropping.
They're good. They know how to beat us pretty good.
But is it why, Benari, if it was the Lincoln Project or Republican voters against Trump and things like that, they would have held off for a month.
Unless something worse is coming in a month. I'm curious about something. So I'm curious, and I want the panel's thoughts on this. So these are offensive. Like, the statements are offensive. They're disgusting. I'm like I said, I was a little shocked by the Fox News confirmation, but like my reaction to it was, even if it's not true, it's true. So, but I'm curious what we think about the fact that I feel like people are continually surprised when Donald Trump says something really offensive about a group. And it's almost like, well, and I feel like the undercurrent is like, well, I knew he believed terrible things about other people, but me? And I want the panel's thoughts on that. And Mediva, we'll start with you. I'm just curious, and just about why this time suddenly there's this like, whoa, how could he say that after he said it?
Right. This should not be a surprise to anyone. It's like the same kind of like terrible thing he's always said. But I think you're like pointing in the right direction about like what's different this time is that it's like, oh, now he's talking about us. Like, I could have forgiven it before when he was talking about those other people. Those other people deserve to be trash talked, but now he's talking about us. And there's also a bit of a difference here in that the us is like typically a core constituency of the like Republican Party. Donald Trump makes this whole big show of like, no one loves the troops more than me, like no one's more patriotic than me. He's out here like hugging flags and stuff. When it comes to like actually not saying terrible things about people, like he can't meet that like bar is on the floor. Like insulting the dead is just like, I mean, like literally it's like a platitude, like don't speak ill of the dead.
Yeah.
And so like this is like a threshold that people are like, whoa, this is, while we're not surprised, it's still jaw-dropping in its cruelty and absence of empathy. Also, like these are people who have gone through something horrific, at least ostensibly for the good of the country. So at the very least, it should be like the government sent these people to war. The government should feel some type of way about it. And instead, he's just like, no, they're gross, they're losers, they're suckers. Yeah, so people should not be surprised. But I understand a bit like why this one has taken them back a bit more. Also, going a bit back to why they shouldn't be surprised, the military has never been something Donald Trump actually cared about. It's been like a prop for him at best. I think generally it's more like a narcissistic object for him. Like he sees it as an extension of himself and like, oh, this is a representative of my own strength and power because I want to be a big man and I want to use this to do whatever I want. And so of course he's going to look at fallen soldiers and be like, oh, well, they're losers and they don't represent me. Like I like people who weren't captured. The strong people, those are my people. But yeah, of course we know that he's not strong at all.
What's interesting about you bring that up, the military's never mattered him. And I do think like I am someone who when he was still with us, I could be highly critical of John McCain. But I do think like there is like when it comes to taking care of the military, there are your McCain Republicans and your Trump Republicans, and the Trump Republicans are the ones who get in front of the flag and say, "Yay, military!" And when your McCain Republicans actually do work, like he and Bernie Sanders, that reform of the VA is some incredibly important legislation that he did,
which Trump takes credit for.
Yeah,
that Bernie Sanders and John McCain did.
It is not
under Obama.
I look. He attacked one of his reasons for attacking John McCain is that John McCain was bad on the VA without any kind of evidence on that, except for the fact that John McCain was working for decades on trying to reform the VA. I mean, he also, by the way, takes credit for the Healthcare Reform Act, the Veterans Choice, which passed in 2014. He takes credit for it. He says, "Oh yeah, we got through Veterans Choice." What do you mean, we, Kemosabe? I mean,
well, and I think what occurred to me thinking about that is like there's always been, and this is not just Republicans. There's always been like your superficial supporters of the military and people who do the actual work. And I got curious in this conversation, and I looked it up. And the demographics of the U.S. military as of the end of last year was still 57% white, 43% people of color, but that was the largest percentage of people of color in its history, and it is still like the trend lines are still growing. It is, it's similar with the, it's sort of similar with that idea of like it is, maybe it's a solid career path for a lot of people who might not have a ton of options. It's growing, and I just found it interesting that like the superficial support of veterans has seemed to have grown stronger in the Republican Party as the image of veterans is starting to change. Megan, go ahead.
Longest I've gone on the show without speaking.
Yeah.
So
the polling was against you. I'm sorry.
What?
The polling was against you. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No. I mean, I should by no means be the first person to talk on this topic. But one thing that we haven't broached in relationship to Trump and the military in this conversation yet is Trump and the police, and the way he talks about the military versus the way he talks about the police. And having, I don't want to start speculating wildly, but the thing is some of the things that Benari specifically was saying 4 years ago that sounded like speculating wildly have been actually accurate predictions about how Trump has handled things. And we've been talking about this for years, but it's becoming more and more evident that if Trump loses this election, he's not just going to step down. And so what are his options if he wants to hold power? Well, he can employ the military. But if he can't employ the military, then who's he going to employ? People with guns all across the country. And the thing is that there is a segment of America that is very pro-American, but also hates the police or hates the military. And this idea that I have to arm myself to protect against the US military. And so I think that some of this is actually, as much as it seems stupid, these are the kinds of Republicans or right-wingers that have turned against him anyway. There's a whole other segment of this country that is very happy to say, screw the military. We are our own military. And those are the people that Trump is going to have to call on in a civil war. So am I speculating wildly, or is this?
It's like, it's a little of both.
Well, look, he's done test runs.
Yeah.
You know, he very much wants to send federal troops to cities, and the military he's been very upset that the military has pushed back and won't let him because of posse comitatus and the Constitution. And so what he's done is he's empowered Bill Barr and the Department of Homeland Security to piece together these DHS and piece together, like a Gestapo, these security forces, these federal security forces, and piecemeal them together into a private security force that's kind of bureaucratic and doesn't really belong to anyone, but they're under these, you know, the banner of Bill Barr can tell the people in charge, who, by the way, are all acting secretaries, because we don't have people like these are not people that have been confirmed by the Senate any longer. So we have all these unaccountable people in charge of a bureaucratic private security force that the president wants to send out because he can't send the actual army to go do the things that he wants to do.
Well, as you said, private in the sense of unaccountable. They are public.
Right. They're public.
They are public sector forces. Some of them from Border Patrol.
Exactly.
And I think,
but it's like ICE, Border Patrol, Homeland Security.
First of all, being in the public sector does not mean you're accountable in any way. We know this because we know what the police force in this country looks like.
But the police are also not accountable to government officials. This is another thing that we're all learning.
He was also called on local police departments to use military tactics against protesters.
Right.
I mean, looking at Portland specifically.
Mm-hmm.
This is the kind of news we're used to looking at that's coming out of Portland is what we look at when there are civil wars in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a militarized police force that is terrorizing its citizens, they just went, I'm sorry, Tom, if I'm jumping the gun.
No, please.
But the police just
Jump
killed
the gun.
a guy for killing a right-wing protester. Now, I'm not going to defend his actions, but they brought in the Kenosha shooter who murdered 2 Black Lives Matter protesters. They brought him in alive without incident, and they killed this other guy who killed a right-wing protester. And the way it seemed is that, well, when you kill a right-wing protester, you're killing one of our own. It's this us versus them mentality.
Right.
So there is this, Trump is on the side of the police, and the police are against people that are against police violence and arguing, guess what? Actually, we should stop killing Black people, and the police should stop ending traffic stops.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on a couple threads that are going through here. One, I want to note, Bernard, you mentioned posse comitatus. For folks who don't know those words, because like I know Bernard and I do, but I'm not does, and like all the listeners will.
Thank you.
There's like an 1878 like law, the Posse Comitatus Act, and it basically enshrines this legal principle that says the president can't use the military as his own like domestic police force. But what we're seeing, what Benai was mentioning, is that he's trying to like get around this on technicalities. So he does have his own personal army, which is extremely problematic. This like and like, you know, we talked about sending the military to protest, but we also should be thinking about the possibility of sending the military to the polls. Like seeing Donald Trump using the military as his own sort of like personal stormtroopers. And backtracking a bit to how we were talking about the Atlantic article, I think that his reaction to that piece, you know, he was like, oh, this is a fake story. This is a disgrace. They shouldn't even be allowed to do this. And that we shouldn't be allowed to do this thing points to his feeling that he should be able to get to determine like what gets published, that like he like care about the First Amendment. So I think what all of these taken together shows is just his authoritarian tendencies.
Yeah.
And how like we're seeing him try to consolidate power in this like unitary executive, and it's real bad. And honestly, it could be worse because he's also just not that good at being bad. Like fascist, and this is what we're seeing now.
Robert, I want to let you get to that point. I just want to add one thing. One other thing that is I think a real indicator of authoritarian tendencies is looking down upon soldiers who die or are captured. Like that is who does that? Dictators. Robert, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that, two points. Number one, given what we've seen, as Benari said, how he's sort of amassing these militia groups and taking something from column A at DHS and something from Border Patrol over here and so forth. 2020 may be Donald Trump's grab him by the posse comitatus moment, and it's something that we have to keep an eye on. And as you said, he's been
pun brought to you by the Daily News.
he's been just like Benari is not speaking for the military. I don't think the Daily News would like to associate themselves with that.
With you.
or with me. But the other, I think I've said this at least once on this show before, is that as bad as things are under Donald Trump, it could be worse if he were not the saying the quiet part out loud president. Because there have been a number of cases over the last few years where a story comes out that accuses him of some awful thing, and Republicans and members of the administration rush to his defense and say, no, that's outrageous. He would never say something like that. How dare you say that, da. And then he basically goes out and comes out and admits that he said that he said it. The same thing on Friday. He comes out. He has a whole rush of people within the administration. He even gets Melania to tweet out that that this never happened.
Yeah, and then Melania's communications director to tweet out that this never happened.
What? And then he gets a question at his press conference yesterday, where he cuts off the question in the middle. So he misunderstands the intent of the person. I think
what was
going
the
to ask.
Question? Yeah.
It was something along the lines. They were prefacing the accusation about what Trump had said to John Kelly or he had said to Kelly about his son. But Trump cuts it off. And he basically goes into this rant where it makes it very clear that he assumes that Kelly is the source of the stuff that's in the Atlantic, and he then completely trashes his former chief of staff in such a way that it kind of supports the allegations that are in the Atlantic to begin with. I mean, and if anybody had some kind of a sense that, oh well, maybe he doesn't think about people who serve in the military quite this way. The way he talked about his chief of staff. And look, and people can criticize John Kelly about how he served Trump and so forth. But the fact that he was a respected military leader himself, and he sent his son, who ended up dying, sent his son into the military as well. But to have then Trump just trash him and say, well, he couldn't really handle the pressure here in the White House. He said, okay, yeah, that sounds definitely like the guy who would call people who had served in the military who died suckers and losers.
And what I just want to add to that, and I think that Robert's dead on, because this is very consistent with how he treats things that he thinks are actually true. And so that's how, that's sort of the tell, is he as you said, with the mini strokes, all he could do was talk about strokes. It's like, no one said anything about strokes, but now you're talking about strokes. No one said anything about John Kelly, but now you're no one said anything about John Kelly being the source, but you're trashing John Kelly as the source. But all of this goes to the chaos and the undermining of all of our institutions, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's voting integrity or an election integrity, whether it's the United States military forces. And I want to say that there's a difference between the National Guard, whose primary purpose is to protect states and states' rights, and they're called out under their governors, and then the federal force, which falls under the commander-in-chief, and then there's a hierarchy there. He is eradicating the lines between everything, which is, surprisingly to everyone, is something that Vladimir Putin would very much like to see. Whatever the end game is, it doesn't matter if he successfully brings all these forces under his autocratic control or not. The real intent is to make everyone else completely distrustful of all the institutions that keep our country running, whether it's trust in Congress to do their job or the military to be able to carry out their duties successfully,
Post
or
office,
post office, which is in the which is required by, which is so important, or the U.S. Census also, which is so important. It's in Article 1 of the Constitution. It's how we find out who we are and what we need in this country. All of these things that are essential to the functioning of democracy have been undermined by this man causing chaos. 2 weeks ago, he stood, or a week ago, I don't even know time anymore, between COVID and the president. Time is irrelevant, but he stood on the steps of the White House, which is the people's house, and he can't do that. Well, he did. He used the United States, the power of the presidency and the White House for a purely partisan political event, which is illegal. Illegal. Everyone who participated in that broke the law. It's not a rule. The Hatch Act is a law.
Except actually the president and the vice president.
Except for the president and the vice president, but every other elected official who participated in that broke the law.
At the door.
Okay, and so we have a real problem here because, okay, well, that's a law, but they didn't follow it. Why would I as a U.S. citizen follow any law after witnessing that? If we don't enforce laws, what's the point of them? And so we're in this existential nightmare now of, if anybody can just do anything, why should I follow the rules? Why do I have to do this? It's all chaos. And this is the place that we're in right now. And this is his real threat to democracy, in my opinion.
Go ahead, Megan. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I agree with everything Benaria is saying, but I do think that there is a piece of nuance that needs to be pointed out, especially drawing back to what Tom, you were pointing out, Diva, you were pointing out earlier, which is people's levels of surprise. And one of the things that I have seen consistently since 2015 is that there is a certain segment of the population that is appalled and surprised. And then there's a certain segment of the population, and I'm thinking mostly of activists, and specifically Black activists that have been like, this shouldn't surprise anybody. And one of these things that shouldn't surprise anybody is that public officials break the law. And in fact, the law has never been equally enforced. And the laws only matter if you enforce them. And so part of the thing that I'm in a little bit of disagreement with you about, Benari, is this idea of some of these institutions which were fundamentally broken from the get-go, or even if they worked in theory, they were never working in practice because they were never being applied equally.
Yes, but now he gets to both sides this and say, well, I'm only breaking a system that was already broken and we can't work to fix it, and look at everything's bullshit. And you can't fix the system that way. And it's long been a way to suppress participation in the system by just telling people it's fucked up anyway. I think Obama nailed it during his speech during the DNC when he was talking about the activists of the 60s who were prevented, who marched and were prevented and lived through that. And one of the things that really resonated with me is he said, if these people who never benefited from the system could still march and believe and work to fix it, we have no excuse. And I think we as passionate, whether we're activists or just regular citizens who are required to be active participants in our system, we need to be more active right now. We need to protect these systems at all costs. We need to reinforce what they were put in place to do. We need to live up to the ideals, even if they've never been lived up to before. It's incumbent on us now to make sure that we do this.
But that's part of the double speak lie that is happening. By the way, I've got the Big Brother is Watching You poster in the background, and I very deliberately wore these earrings for the show today, 1984 and Animal Farm.
Okay, good.
That when you were saying,
I've never read Animal Farm. I hear it's about a farm. Seems nice. Go ahead.
That's something, yeah.
I've read Animal.
Okay.
That's bad,
One
Tom.
kid story about animals getting along.
Oh,
Pixar's doing a version of it next year, I think.
I'd watch it.
So I would. The idea that we need to be resisting, many people are, and it is in fact the very people that are holding politicians accountable. And yes, I do think there are people that are always angry or find a reason to be angry. And there are also people that subvert things, and you have a large contingent of white protesters that are just angry and are more or less fucking things up.
Well, yeah, thank you. Hello.
That's how we do it.
The Black Lives
Look.
Matter, with the Black Lives Matter movement, and I'm blanking on the name of this woman who wrote this. I'm going to look it up while someone else is talking.
Sure.
But now I've lost my
you were saying that white people fuck things up. I believe that.
Evergreen tweet.
Yeah.
Right on cue.
Whatever we join, we don't do a great job of joining it.
There are people doing exactly what Benari is describing. And then he is calling for the police to come or the military to go in and murder, imprison those people. So this is the double speak element. The system doesn't work, but then the people that are actually coming up with humane solutions and reasonable requests are being vilified even further as being anti-American.
I want to move on a little bit. Go ahead, Mediva. You were going to make a point? Thanks.
Yeah, I was thinking, you're saying the system doesn't work, but simultaneously he's making sure the system doesn't work.
Yeah.
And like, similarly, it's with like mail-in voting, how he was telling people to go out and vote twice. It's like, oh, like I'm concerned about voter fraud, but the way to solve this is to go out and commit some voter fraud.
Right.
Like, that's not how this works. That's
Yeah.
not how
Hey, a negative times a negative equals a positive. So counterpoint.
There you go.
I want to, this is a pretty organic transition, which is we are now, it's Labor Day weekend, which in the olden days was the start of the presidential election season. But now I believe they start like pretty much the minute the last one ends, because
This is actually the start of the 2026 midterms.
none of us, mainly because here's, by the way, my working theory is no American really wants to be happy. That's why we obsess over campaigns so much. But we are in the middle.
It was Erin B. Logan for the LA Times. White people have petrified Black Lives Matter. It's a problem. And she breaks down, or they break down, I don't actually know their gender. They break down how white people view these problems and why they show up and the ways they show up versus how the Black community does. It's anyway.
We will drop that link in the comments on this so people can read. But the election is essentially in full swing, and boiled down, the argument is COVID versus crime, it seems to me. Like Joe Biden is running on a campaign of the COVID-19 crisis is pretty much destroying our country and bringing to light pretty much every problem. And Donald Trump is running on, see all the crime in our cities happening right now with me in charge? Going to be even worse if Joe Biden is president. And this week, the president of the United States, who again, as of this recording, still Donald John Trump, a memo was released through his Department of Justice that he was planning to cut federal funding for cities like New York, Seattle, Washington, D.C. I noted it was none of the cities in any of the states he needs to win this fall. Over what he viewed as pro-anarchist cities that weren't doing enough to fight crime. Robert.
Anarchistic jurisdictions.
Jurisdictions.
Who I think I actually saw open for Wall of Voodoo in 1988. It was
because you're
memorable.
older than me, I'll assume that was a good joke.
Yeah, that exactly. It was a memorable show. The funny thing about. The funny thing about the way you frame this is actually accurate. This COVID versus crime. But the really funny thing about it is that Donald Trump actually gets both sides of the equation. Because, as you said, Biden wants to run on the idea of focusing on COVID and how Donald Trump has mishandled it. Trump is emphasizing the crime side, but he can point to people like Michael Cohen, Steve Bannon, Rick Gates, Paul Manafort, who seem to be doing
people away,
who seem to be doing who seem to be doing a whole lot of criming themselves. So I would
argue that means Donald Trump is responsible for sending a lot of guys to jail.
He put so many people in jail.
Exactly.
Look, Robert, keep your friends close, but your criminals closer.
This is quite true, and it kind of makes you. I'm just hoping that if we have debates, there's supposed to be 3 debates, but we'll see. I actually think there's probably gonna be 1 debate. And
have a debate.
We'll see how that goes for Trump on whether or not there's more.
And then we'll see what happens afterwards, because going back several election cycles, whenever there's been an incumbent president running for re-election, the first debate tends to go disastrously.
Yeah.
I mean, Obama had an awful debate in 2012 against Romney, his first one. Bush had an awful one against Kerry in 2004. Clinton's first one against Dole wasn't that great. Wasn't that great either. The incumbent turned it around and did quite well, and went for re-election. Given the times we're in right now, if Trump has a bad debate, given how they've been promoting Biden as this doddering, senile goofball, Trump will figure out how to get around it. But if that
in 2004, hang on, in 2004, the Bush campaign said John Kerry was the greatest debater since Cicero. Can you imagine anyone even saying that in a presidential politics at this point?
But the thing is, they knew if they said that,
they were setting a really high
John Kerry would say something like, "Well, Cicero, I don't know if that was really the best kind of comparison," and then you would just realize that they had won the comparison because John Kerry had to go.
But you nailed it, because look, this is why I don't think there's going to be a debate. Something is going to pop up. It's going to be real important. He's going to be super busy handling COVID and crime at the same time on the night of the debate. There's no way that he wants to get in there, because first off, if they do debate, Joe Biden doesn't give a fuck. Joe Biden will cut him up and just be like, "That's bullshit. I'm sorry, that's malarkey. That's malarkey. This guy over here." I mean, there's no way that these 2 old white guys aren't just going to be interrupting.
I assume that Joe Biden's people have just trained him to only say, "Come on, man," every time.
Everything. Just be, "Come on, man."
Come on, man.
He had a great line.
I gotta defend Trump on this one, okay? He's an excellent debater. He makes everything about himself. He's what we call a master debater.
Yeah.
Hey-o.
But here's his problem.
Sassy.
Here's his problem with making it COVID versus crime, because leading up to the general, the big it's really hard to paint Joe Biden as a dangerous socialist after he defeats Bernie Sanders in the primary, and you've been bashing Joe Biden for Joe Biden is a socialist. You mean the guy you've been calling the author of the crime bill? So that's really hard. And then they ran against Kamala as Kamala's a cop. So she's a dangerous left-wing socialist, but she's also a cop. So their own talking points now are working against Republicans. Their own talking points are working against Republicans because, well, we're going to run against them on crime, even though all the stuff we've been saying for a year.
It doesn't matter.
No, but it doesn't
matter.
But here's what does matter.
They have opposite thoughts in their head. And
by the time we have an election,
I'm going to need both of you to shout at the exact same time.
But by the time we have an election, over 200,000 people are going to be dead from COVID. Like, it's like, that's a serious thing. And we care less every day because these numbers become so overwhelming that statistics don't mean anything
The funny
anymore.
thing is, Benari, the funny thing is, as we know,
Tell us the funny thing about people dying from COVID.
Our
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Our Republican friends, I mean, we saw this on Twitter just in the last couple of days.
Robert, you're our Republican friends.
Yeah, you're the only one. It's not, you're my only one.
But
Sorry, Chris Morales.
Hillary Clinton dropped a Twitter bomb on something that Trump had said, and just like that, you had a swarm of people coming in saying, Ms. Benghazi, you better sit this one out. So it's amazing that they can default to Benghazi, where tragically for U.S. diplomats and security people died. They can still make Benghazi a big thing. 4 people dying, makes Hillary Clinton, this beast that should never speak again. 200,000 Americans dying is, MAGA, Trump 2020.
So far,
200,000 suckers.
No. It is like the Stalin. Was Stalin or Lenin that made the statement, that one death is a tragedy. One death is a tragedy. 1 million is a statistic.
That was John Lennon, yes, who said
It was McCartney.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Anytime people reference Lennon, I immediately do that.
The first people are soldiers. They give their lives for the country, right? They're losers. If you're one of the deaths from COVID, you gave your life for the economy, in which case you're a hero.
Now, if you're a diplomat who died at Benghazi, you're not a loser, but you are a geekazoid. That's
there you go.
The official preferred terminology.
That's your point. Megan. That's a great point there.
But let's talk about for a moment this threat that the president has issued towards cities. Of course, the president of the United States does not have control over federal funding, so he can't really decide if that money gets sent. The Congress can. But where do we think this comes from? What's the hope? It's it seems like a callback to just try and get us back to a place where people see video of a riotous protest in one corner of Portland while the rest of the city's out drinking coffees and having brunch, and get the narrative back. What do we think?
So I think there are a couple of things going on here. Like you said, it's unlawful. And so I think what we're seeing again is consistent thread, his authoritarian power grabs. Like, I don't have the power to do this thing, but I'm gonna try to do it anyway, because I should be able to. And also we're seeing, while he thinks he should be able to do whatever he wants, he also is just gonna do things for chaos's sake. Continue to undermine people's faith in our institutions and continue to make it hard to respond to things because there's so much going on that's awful at all times. And so people are just spread thin. But yeah, like you mentioned, he does not have the power to do this. And in fact, multiple courts have already blocked him trying to do similar things. Because he tried to pull this stuff with sanctuary cities, and multiple federal appellate courts and across the country from New York to California were LOL, no, you can't do that. This is a violation of separation of powers. Congress is the one that has the power to grant funds. Even if they were going to attach conditions to funds, Congress can sometimes do that in a lot of instances. The president, however, cannot, especially unilaterally just being nah. So it's just, continuing to see Donald Trump try consolidate power and do whatever he wants, and also just throw feces on the wall and just see what happens.
I just want to make an addendum to that. I immediately imagined a judge saying, "I rule LOL no," and then pounding a gavel down, and someone saying, "Well, if it please the court, nah." Robert, go ahead.
The one caveat I would say to what Madiba pointed out there, which is quite accurate. The one concern is Trump has been trying to push the envelope in terms of either withholding or redistributing previously authorized funds, and we've seen that in what he's been doing.
I believe they impeached him over it.
Well, no, that was a little bit different. The point,
That was one of the.
The point I'm
Well, he got acquitted, Benari. So guess what? He's a hero.
The point, no, the instance I'm talking about is there is an ongoing dispute on whether the president has the power to take funds that were designated for a specific Pentagon-related projects in various districts around the country, and sending that money to building the wall. The Supreme Court kind of chickened out in a decision earlier this year, where they said that while the legal dispute could still be fought out in lower courts, Trump could continue to go ahead and build parts of the wall with these otherwise allocated funds. So that could eventually end up being a precedent on whether the president has the power to move funds that were supposed to be going to, say, to New York or some other locality, and then they can be withheld for something else.
But this actually goes to the heart of the problem, which is, as much as the president would like to believe he alone does these things, he has a lot of help. And the people who allow him to do these things are as much a part of the problem as the president doing these things itself. This was one of the reasons why during the impeachment, Adam Schiff was talking about, if a president will do this, what won't he do if we let him get away with this? And the Senate ceded their powers. The Senate ceded their oversight powers to the executive branch. And the reality is he'll keep doing it if he's not stopped. He will just do it. And as he appoints judge after judge, and a number of judges who are barely minimally qualified to just outright unqualified to sit on the bench, but they're on there because they have a certain political philosophy. There's a reason why they do that, because systems don't run themselves. People and make these decisions.
You saw a good example. You saw a good example of that when a lower panel approved DOJ's dropping the Mike Flynn case, and right. Then it went up. It was appealed to en banc, the entire DC circuit, and they said no. They by 8-2 they said no. This case can this case can go on. The only two judges that supported the original decision were the original two judges,
the 2-1, right?
Both of whom were Trump appointees.
And we see the danger in this, and this is another thing that undermines the system. Is we have those of us who believe that it should be, fair and judicious and impartial, and then you have Republicans like Donald Trump, or I shouldn't even say Republicans. Really, he has no actual underlying philosophy other than winning, but he has brought the Republican Party to heel right now. And what you have is a Republican Party that has been brought to heel under his thumb, and they don't even have a platform. That's how bad it has become. The platform is, yes, you did this. That's good that you did that. That's their platform. And unfortunately,
yes, sir, Mr. Trump. Anything you say, sir.
Yeah, anything. And it's unfortunate because they have tied their political future so much to him that this election isn't going to just be about Donald Trump. The Republicans stand to lose a lot of power.
What's interesting about... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, no, I was just going to say that if we are so shell-shocked from 2016 and, how could that happen? 2016 was a very tight race. The national numbers aside, which pretty much held up according to the popular vote, but in the battleground states, they were within the margins, and that's where Donald Trump won. He won in the margins. When you look at the numbers right now, it's not even close. It's really not close. In Wisconsin, 9 to 11 point lead in Wisconsin and Michigan in battleground states. I mean, even in Pennsylvania, which is the tightest, is about Joe Biden's up four percentage points, which, again, that's the definition of if you're an incumbent president, if you're an incumbent party right now, you'd be shitting yourselves under normal circumstances. We need to be worried that these guys aren't concerned about losing, because these numbers are so bad. No, I mean, these are worse than Carter numbers.
They've reportedly pulled out of. No, go ahead, Megan. Sorry.
The numbers were in favor of Hillary months in advance.
Not by this.
Not like this. Not
like this. Joe, this is what I'm trying to say is we're so shell-shocked by what happened in 2016. Hillary's numbers were very close in the battleground states within the 2% plus or minus.
I want to make a couple of points here.
Positives.
One is you're talking about the numbers and like how stark they are, and why they're not shitting themselves, like why they're not scared. And I think part of it is because those numbers have to translate into votes, and they can to suppress the vote. And just like a couple side like tangential points to that, because it sort of like connects to things we were talking about earlier. Bill Barr, like top attorney in the country, like attorney general somehow, was asked about Trump and is like, oh, you should vote twice thing. And the attorney general said like, oh, I don't actually know what the laws are in various states. So he's not necessarily saying to do something illegal, which is like wild and like would be funny if he wasn't just like greasing the wheels for fascism. And so just to the point, Bernard, you were mentioning earlier about like all of the people willing to just go along with all of this. Like, again, you know, Bill Barr's been a practicing attorney for decades. He knows the answer to this question. Anyone who's seen Schoolhouse Rock knows the answer to this question. It's like one person, one vote. Yeah. Not one person, one vote, and maybe another backup vote, and then just in case. Like that's not how it goes. The lyrics don't work like that. So we're seeing again just like undermining of the systems, people installed in power throughout government, like within, you know, the executive branch, like within like the agencies, within like in the judiciary, just like literally everywhere. Donald Trump is like so completely and thoroughly corrupted it with people whose only loyalty is not to the Constitution, it's not to like America or like its peoples, it's to Donald Trump. And then we have this very big concern here about like what the election is actually going to look like, because even though the majority of people in this country do not want Donald Trump, including the majority of people who are like voter eligible, the real question is, will these people be able to exercise their right to vote? And this, I mean, voter suppression has always existed in this country. It's like as long, like from the very beginning, like when Black people got the right to vote, like since that point at like the like latest, this country has been like working overtime to try and make sure we can't vote. And this sort of like goes to Megan's point earlier too about how like people shouldn't be surprised, because now it's like now like white people too can be like, wait a second, like I can't mail my ballot, like what's going on, like why is vote being attacked? And Black people are like, welcome, have a seat. Look,
I think you're absolutely right. All I'm saying is that most people feel that if Donald Trump wins, it's because they've stolen it. And that's being treated not like a crime, but treated as a campaign strategy that's somehow viable. And that's very scary. But the other thing that terrifies me right now is voter suppression normally works again on you can suppress a certain number, but with the numbers that Biden is putting out, you could suppress 1 million people and he's still winning by 4 or 5 percentage points. That's what I'm trying to say. Biden's numbers right now are stronger than Obama's at this point. And Obama won so big in 2008 that they changed election laws across Republican-run states to get rid of them. Then they got rid of the Voting Rights Act in 2013 and got rid of another 560 polling places in southern states across the country. So yes, Republicans are very aware of how to prevent people from voting. But the numbers are so big. That's why people say you got to vote numbers because you have to overwhelm them. And what concerns me is the numbers will be big, and then Bill Barr will take them to court. We're not going to get election results the night when we're not going to get election results the night of. But what's going to happen in the 2 or 3 months when they're fighting it out in the courts, and who are the judges who are going to decide which votes count and whether or not we're going to have a validated election?
Yeah, which is why I would make the. I'm sorry. Say that again, Megan. Sorry.
I was going to say that's if we get to the courts in the months and there isn't the civil war in the meantime. This is why Bernie Sanders has just said we got to let people know they're not going to have results on election night because they're used to that. We're not going to have it. Like,
well, you know, we didn't get an official result. We did not get an official result on election night in 2016. I mean, Hillary ended up conceding the next day. Most people kind of figured out what was going to be happening, but
same with 2004.
It's same as 2004. We know obviously what happened we know what happened in 2000. In fact, 2008 was the last time. Well, actually, I guess 2012. I guess we knew. I think it was after midnight, but I think we knew.
But it's not going to be the next morning.
Exactly. Which is why which is why I tell everybody who wants to see Donald Trump evicted from the White House. I tell them that the real key could, if the odds of a successful result greatly increase if Joe Biden wins Florida, because number one, Florida over the last couple of election cycles has had a greater facility and experience in terms of mail-in voting, mail-in balloting. So they know how. In fact, at the Democratic primary earlier this year, I think 70 or 80% of all the votes were counted that night, and it was a Biden blowout, so it was a lot easier. But the point is, if on election day, if on election night, Joe Biden has a good lead in Florida, even if some of the other states are late reporting, it becomes very difficult for Donald Trump to start saying. I know there's a Democratic group out there that is talking about this whole idea of a red mirage, where because so many Republicans are going to be voting in person, the in-person vote on election night may favor Donald Trump in multiple states. Meanwhile, the mail-in ballots are going to be being counted in the next few days, but Trump is going to start saying, "Well, I'm leading, and they're trying to steal the election, If Joe Biden is leading in Florida on election night, it becomes it forces Trump to basically shut up and wait for the rest of the ballots to be tallied in states across the country.
That seems very likely.
Doesn't. Nothing forces him to shut up.
That's a good point too. I'd say the most important thing is, fortunately, Florida's never been a cause of headaches for elections. We could
I know, but
always count on Florida. That's the takeaway from the last 20 years of elections.
We are out of time. There's something I wanted to talk about, but I'm just going to add it here as a little addendum at the end, which is these are all really good points. Shields should be up, for lack of a better word, on election night around this stuff. It is not lost on me that,
guy there.
It's not lost on me though that if the question is, what do people care more about, crime or COVID-19? Mitch McConnell has given his United States senators running for re-election permission to run far away from Donald Trump. And in fact, the Senate Republicans put out a series of videos this week encouraging people to wear masks. And meanwhile, while Donald Trump is vowing to have a vaccine ready by election day, a group of pharmaceutical companies, not friendly to the left, have issued a joint statement agreeing that they will not rush the vaccine. They will not force it to market. They are going to put it out when it is ready to go. That to me speaks to a lack of confidence in his ability to win it fairly, I should say. Thank you so much. This was a terrific panel. Thank you very much, panel. Thank you very much, Madiva Denny, for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Thank you, Benari Polton, for you're not a sucker or a loser, my friend. I don't care what the host of The Apprentice says.
It's the second nicest thing you've ever said to me, Tom.
That's true. First nicest was when I called you a person I knew. Megan Sass, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for Star Trek Action Figure Collection making a cameo. And thank you, as always, Robert George. And with that, also want to say a quick thank you to Marcely Jean-Pierre for joining us in the role of Donovan the Destroyer Duncan. I hope I didn't mix up the first and last names there. And thank you very much, as always, to Kevin Scott for our show animation, Joanne Harris for the show theme song, Declan Shalvey and Jordy Belair for the electoral dysfunction Eagle art. And thank you to Ned Thorne for helping me put these together every single week. And with that, we're going to throw it over to the great state of California, to our friend Killy Dwyer to play us out. Ned Thorne, star wipe us to California.
What's up? What's up? I am honored and blessed to be here. I got to stop looking at myself and the monitor rather than looking at the camera. I'm so vain. I'm a vain lady. Also, it's a sweltering, put the pop filter on for that. It's sweltering here in LA, Marina Del Rey to be exact. Thank you for having me on the show. I've been a bit ahead of the game, you know, with the whole fearing for my life, constantly paranoid about my health. I have a high anxiety level. It's called being a hypochondriac. Oh, you too? Oh, sorry to hear that. All the medication in the world is not helping the situation right now, right? So I figured I'd just sing about it. Gonna use my burp and fart keyboard to help me out, because when is that not funny? Am I right? Sounds good. How about a burp? I don't feel right. I call him sick because I don't feel well. My stomach aches. I salivate when I hear a bell. And it tastes like chalk and pennies. You know that can't be right. I feel like I can't breathe and my chest is getting tight. I was watching Dr. Eyes. Yo, what a pompous prick. He said no symptoms, no discomfort. Don't mean you're not sick. Well, I have that, or do I mean that I do not? I went on WebMD. I saw 100 things I do got. Spina bifida, rickets, and scarlet fever too. Flesh-eating bacteria, and also the swine flu. The mumps and the measles, the clap and the shingles. COVID. I mean COVID. Come on. Ooh, sorry. I'm a hypochondriac. I think that I am dying. Scorpion mandibular, please know that I'm not lying. My tumor's just too small to show up on my x-ray. And I'll go back to the doctor tomorrow, twice the next day. You guys know Zocdoc, right? Zocdoc.
1-800-DENTIST.
Zocdoc.
1-800-DENTIST.
Zocdoc.
You think I'm crying wolf? You think it's paranoia? I brought you a stool sample, which just seemed to annoy ya. Please take my blood and a urine sample too. When I feel happy and just fine, I don't know what to do. 1-800-DENTIST.
Take it all the way back to the... Here's the moral of the story, okay? Ready? I'm a hypochondriac, I told you I was dying. And I'm singing to you from my grave, now you know I wasn't lying. Just because you think you're done dying don't mean that you're not. It took me 90 years to die from what I got. Natural cause is...